Hey guys, and welcome to Coding with Josh. Today I'm going to go over CSS. If you watched my last video on HTML, I'm going to just play off of that. If you didn't, that's okay. If you already know about some of the things like tags and what they're used for. So today I'm going to get into our CSS, and if you read this, you're going to learn that there's different ways to host your CSS. You can do it in your file. You can do it in an external file. You can do it inline. And so I'm going to show you kind of all three of those ways today, if possible, and if we have time. But I also want to hit that there are these things called selectors. So when we went over HTML, I talked about tags, and tags they're a way to select things. They're not the only way, but they are a way. So see how I have this P here? I'm calling out, and of course P, when we had a P tag for paragraph, and then this P selector, they both correlate. So we're calling out all paragraphs. So if I was to copy this down here, I would expect that my paragraph tag would change color, and that it would also change to be center. I can change it to be right. I can change it to be, left. Let's leave it center. And so you can see that that's how we affect the style of our document for HTML that's already there. So this HTML, it already exists in this, I've got another web page going that has these two little, what do you call it? That has these two elements in them, and we're just calling it out by its selector. So let's talk about the other ones. There's also an ID and a class. So we didn't really talk about ID or class, so I want to take a second to do that. If I write an HTML tag for a paragraph, inside of the opening tag, I can write ID equals. So I'm now giving it an ID, and I can say class equals. So when I'm setting up my HTML, I can give it an ID and a class. If it's someone else's HTML you're dealing with, you can call out the ID or class they gave it if you want to style it different for some reason. But typically you'll be working with your own document, and you can choose to give it an ID or a class. So what's the difference between these two? An ID can really only be used once throughout your document, and a class can be used over and over and over. So a lot of times we use class to do our styling because of that. So I could call this, paragraphs, and then I know, oh, I'm going to reach out to all my paragraphs, or and be as descriptive as you can, right? If it's not just paragraphs, if it's like paragraphs about dogs, I can say it's like my dog's paragraph or whatever. So here's all my dogs, or maybe it's about animals, animals. So I can do any of those, and I really can call it whatever I want. So maybe I'm doing animals, and then I call this one dog. And then I have another paragraph, for, let's see, dog, cat, horse, pig. So all of them can have the animals class, but their ID needs to be separate. So I would expect this is dog, and this is cat, Now this isn't showing up over here because I don't have that set up to show our HTML. But if we went back to our HTML page and I plug that in, you're going to see that we have a dog, a cat, a horse, and a pig. So that does work, and you can see that it does recognize our attributes ID and class. Okay, so over here in our CSS, well, I do have this styled with with the ID and a class, I believe. Oh, I have an ID. So the ID for this one is title. So if I put hashtag title, that's how you call out the hashtag or the pound sign. That is how you call out things with an ID. So you do pound sign, and then you do whatever the the name of the ID is. So you can do dog, cat, but in this case it's title because that's what this is called. So I could say color red. And I don't know why that didn't work. Oh, because I was highlighting it and you couldn't tell. So there we go, color red. Now watch this. Because I should be able to, I said you can call it out by tag, and H1 is the tag. So I can put color equals orange. Actually, let's do like green. That way you can tell if it changes. And so there, I can see that it's not changing. Well, why not? Well, what if I do hashtag title again? Okay, that changed it. And here's why. It's going to take the furthest most to the bottom of your code. So if I have duplicates at all, it's going to overwrite what I have above with my duplicate one. And this happens a lot more than you think it does. So I'm just kind of giving you forewarning ahead of time that, hey, there are chances that you have duplicates and it's going to overwrite what you have above and you can't figure out why color red is not working. And chances are you have a conflicting piece of your code that's overwriting. So how come this one didn't overwrite when we typed in H1? And the reason is there is actually a level of weight to each selector. So a ID gets a better weight than the tags do. So it's going to default, or it's not going to default, but it's going to choose to go with this top one, even though we have this below it, because it has a greater weight. And same with classes. Like if it had a class, I don't think I gave them classes, which was a mistake. I apologize. But anyways, so if they had classes, like let's say I said, elements, I gave it a class elements, then this would still win because classes are weighted lower than a ID. But they're weighted higher than a tag. So I didn't want to get too far into how things are weighted, but that can cause you issues. So I'm just going to give you that warning. But again, let's go ahead and just type this in, and we can change the color. I'm going to show you a few other things because, I'm not just making this up. I can't just say, change such and such about this to what I want. I have to know what words to use. That's kind of important. So I know that there's something called font dash size, and I can call it 12 point, and see how that took it down. I can call it 42 point. Whoops. And that makes it big. Now, there's two ways. I can do 42 point, I can do pixels. There's also more ways than that, but the two most common that I've seen is pixel and point. So like when you're in Word and you get to choose what your font size is, that's choosing it by point. And in here you can use pixels, and so that's going to say this is 42 pixels, large. So I can change those things. I change the font weight. So let's see if I do 100. Whoops. Notice how I'm putting a semicolon. That's also very important. That's how we end our line. And I'm changing it so it's skinnier. I can change it so it's bolder. Go all the way to 900, and there's a really bold line. I can do letter spacing. And I can say I want 2 pixels. Let's do like 12 pixels so you can really see. There you go. So there's all these ways to style, and there's so many different ways to do it. And I'm going to let you kind of just go find those things. Test things out. Try them. Go to W3 Schools. They have so many ways that you can, reformat text or, do your own things. And this is really just a starting point, and hopefully I'll build this out for you. But that is the basics of how to do CSS. So let me show you one using like a tag. So if I have paragraph, I can say font size for this should be 54 pixels. So that one's huge. And this one doesn't get the same things as this because this is in its own scope, which means it's, it's only going to read this for our title. And this one's only going to get font size for our paragraphs. And that's going to be for every single paragraph since I called out the tag. Now I can also change its family to like, let's do like Tahoma. And you can kind of barely tell. Roboto. Yeah, you can tell a little more with that. So that is CSS. And join me on the next one, and we're going to dive into JavaScript. And hopefully you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.